Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Christian Atheist Podcast. I am your host, Craig Thompson, speaking. And this is the podcast where we take a look at Scripture from a radically empirical and evidential perspective in order to greater understand the world and the genuine essence of what it means to be a Christian. So, for this very first show, we are taking a look at what the interwebs has to say about about Christian atheism. Now, of course, my own perspective on the matter had developed entirely independently of these different sources, but I think it serves as a very as a helpful introduction to say the least about just into the topic in general and see what other. It's always helpful just to see what other people have had to say about the matter and just see, what their take on things were, especially, talking about like theologians who are actually involved in these circles as well, who interacted with other, theologians and ministers. And also larger populations in other parts where it's more commonly accepted as well. And while it's a little bit sparing, of course, as you could probably imagine, with when it comes to two terms that are usually seen as oxymoronic put together, the results on Google are a bit sparing, but there are certainly some results here, some helpful resources, Wikipedia notwithstanding. So we'll take a look at that. We also have a very interesting article on the BBC website. And then, among other things, of course. So yeah, obviously the very first page to pop up is the Christian Atheism article on the Wikipedia. So if we just take a look at that. And so, the Wikipedia article starts off with Christian atheism as the theological position in which the belief in the transcendent or interventionist God is rejected or absent in favor of either finding God totally in the world, as Thomas Altizer had put it, or perhaps following Jesus in a godless world, as William Hamilton has put it. It also mentions that Hamilton's Christian atheism is similar to Jesuism. We'll get more into that later. Like I said, there's a Wikipedia article, there's the BBC article, and let's see. We also have another thing that pops up here on the Google here is a book listing on Amazon called The Christian Atheist, with the subtitle, Believing in God but Living as If He Doesn't Exist. Oh, brother. Anyway, we'll get back to that in a minute. Well, actually, let's address this now. Clearly this is a book written by a bunch of evangelical proselytizers looking to abuse this term, a term that clearly predates the authoring of this book, and it shows you that that they've definitely not done their homework because they because they have failed to take into account the fact that there is actually a Christian atheism. And so, obviously the first problem is the way they define it, believing in God. That's not atheism then, stupid. And living as if atheism is not living as though God does not exist. It is the lack of belief in God. And Christianity also is not defined as believing in God. So there you go, right there. Just the entire definition, falls in on itself. The entire term, the entire coinage of there. Obviously, of course, most Christians and secular atheists, would probably both agree on the idea that theism is intrinsic to Christianity. I mean, after all, how could Jesus be the Son of God if there's no God? But we'll address that shortly. And let's see. Oh, by the way, the author of the book, just to put it out there, is Craig Groeschel, I believe. Groeschel. That's Groeschel. Just to be clear. In fact, really though, I mean, just to play off this subtitle a little bit, I think a more accurate definition for Christian atheism might be not believing in God, but living as if He does exist. Funny enough, and we'll address those points. I'll elaborate more on my take on Christian atheism as we get further along into the show. So now we're on the Wikipedia article for Christian atheism right now, and there are a couple of key figures that they mentioned that I'll be talking about. I've mentioned two of them already, Thomas Altizer and William Hamilton, and one more we're also that I think I'll touch on right now is Paul Tillich, and Paul Tillich, like many theologians who identify themselves as Christian atheists, tend to draw from this theological notion called death of God theology, in which the term God becomes essentially useless within Christianity, and it's essentially the same take as Friedrich Nietzsche's existentialist philosophy applied to Christian theology. And let's see. Yeah, in fact, Paul Van Buren, a Death of God theologian, describes the word God itself as either meaningless or misleading. And he contends it's impossible to even so much as think about God, really. Just to wrap one's head around the idea, or to have a clear understanding of what that is. And Paul Tillich, he actually offered a definition of God. He called it the ground of all being, and famously defended that to say or to claim that God exists is in fact to deny Him, and that has been the basis of his argument for Christian atheism. And that's an interesting take. It strikes me as very semantical, really. The ground of all being. What is that supposed to mean? And then we get to theologians like Thomas Altizer, who authored the book The Gospel of Christian Atheism. Very interesting title and subject matter for sure. And Thomas Altizer, he's a Death of God theologian as well, except he takes it a little bit more literally. He literally says that God, the literal God, died on the cross, died when Jesus was crucified. And that's really sort of a very odd take on that. I mean, how do you substantiate that, Of course, my perspective is, one that's, based on, what evidence is there for this idea? What's the evidence for this? Where? Where do you figure? Where do you see that in, even in Scripture, But, of course, Scriptures are just a reflection of the beliefs of the time, at the very least. And, and so from there we get to people like William Hamilton. And so, for William Hamilton, Jesus is very essential. In fact, as we said earlier, he defined Christian atheism as following Jesus in a godless world, and you know, and says that although Jesus is essential, he says that he's not the foundation of faith. Rather he is, to put in his words, a place to be, a standpoint. I guess it sort of means like almost like a role model, or an ideal to aspire to, or something along those lines. And and he wrote that following Jesus, what that actually means is being alongside our neighbors, and being there for them. It's taking from the great commandment, love, or the second great commandment, which is likened to the first one. To quote scripture, it says, love thy neighbor as thyself. And and he also said, follow Jesus is to be human, to help other humans, and to further humankind. Very, very, very humanist take on the message of Jesus, for sure. And Thomas Altizer, he actually, his views are actually very similar to what's called Jesuism. And what that is, it's a sort of a school of thought, if you will, about the teachings of Jesus that say that he is a good moral that he was an exceptional moral teacher at the very least, and they eschew God, and even go so far as to eschew the entire label of Christian. They have completely divorced themselves from Christianity in its entirety, and have made up their own little identity, called Jesuism, or I think, as some might have put it, Jesusism. And they only, interestingly enough, they only accept as canon the four Gospels in the four Gospel accounts: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John from the Bible, and eschew all the other books, which is kind of funny, because historically, I believe it was with the Council of Nicene, or Nicaea. Pardon me if I get that wrong. I apologize. I can't remember the name exactly off the top of my head, but right around when Christianity was legalized by the Roman Empire under Constantine, the canon of the New Testament was decided on, and it wasn't just the four Gospels that were ever written. There are tons of different Gospels out there. There's a Gospel of St. Peter, Gospel of the Hebrews, various different ones that were excluded but counted as canon by the Christian Church. So I find it just strikes me as really inconsistent to stick with the gospel canon that was decided on by Christians while eschewing Christianity. I think you Jesuits, if any of you are listening to this out there, probably should get your house in order there, or clarify a little, or resolve this inconsistency, this contradiction. Well, that's not to say that Christian atheism is entirely in unity with the Christian community, as of course taking on such a label leads to very strong confrontation with other Christian theists. And in fact, people like Altizer have how do you say, advocated that Christian atheists be separate from the current church at large. And, that's quite understandable why. Of course, we have, things like Altizer himself, to quote him real quick, the radical Christian believes that the ecclesiastical tradition has ceased to be Christian, And so he's literally saying that, Christian theists and, Christianity, as it's known today, is not really Christian at all. And there is actually a fair argument to be made there, I think. But, well, moving on, though. So, looking here at the BBC article, it actually has the title non-realism. And Christian non-realism seems to be a term that's, I guess, is preferred over in the UK over the Christian atheism, as atheism has that really nasty stigma that's been imposed by the Christian right, for years upon years, the political right in particular, and McCarthy are, if you're an atheist, you're accused of being, a communist and a traitor as well. Interestingly enough. And the BBC article offers what are called essentials of non-realistic Christianity. Non-realistic. Unrealistic. That's cute, I guess. I know, I kind of get a kick out of that. And it says, the first one is, religion is about internal spiritual experience, and that is all. Which, the word spiritual there, seems really vague. Like, what do you mean here? What you talking about? And I suppose it just means, like, in a very, sort of like an emotional tranquility kind of deal. The usual, happy, good feelings you associate with being spiritual. Very, very zen, very, in tune with the universe, I suppose, in a way. Although I think a lot of people who call themselves so spiritual might actually be deluding themselves. So it says, there is no world other than the material world around us. There are no beings other than the living organisms on this planet or elsewhere in the universe. La-di-da. On the BBC it defines, it says that God is simply a word that stands for our highest ideals. So, in Christian atheism, there's this really big idea of eschewing theism altogether, and then from there, coming up with or trying to figure out, what a better use of the word God might actually be, and that's totally understandable. In Christianity, throughout the scriptures, there's all this talk of God, and if it's not, if it's not like, you're not supposed to take that literally, like you believe there's like some sort of powerful creative persona that created and controls the universe as we know it, or reality as we know it, then, what good does this word serve? What was the point of it in Christianity? And, of course, a lot of, secular atheists just eschew the whole thing altogether, don't even deal with it. They see it in fact, even to quote Karl Marx, a famous atheist, or infamous, depending on your perspective. He said, religion is he famously said, religion is the opium of the people. And, ideas like Christian atheism just don't seem to gel oftentimes. Obviously I have a very different take, especially, as as someone who takes a look at things empirically and evidentially, I definitely have a different view on that. And so, it also talks about worship and prayer on the BBC. How would worship and prayer work in Christian atheism? And according to this BBC article, the idea of worship and prayer, that worship is a beneficial activity. It says still, despite there not being a God to worship, which really with a God, the idea of worshiping Him just sounds really despotic and pretty. It just doesn't sound like a very good idea in general. But worship in a group is a good way for a community to, one, communicate with each other, two, share ideas and ideals, explore the meaning and purpose of their individual lives and the life of their community. It says about hymn singing and prayer that these are powerful ways for individual human beings to explore the meaning and purpose of their lives. And I guess I can't argue with that too much. I mean, it was through, prayer, not so much singing. Singing definitely not, but, to each their own. Prayer, though, is definitely prayer, and studying the scriptures for me was definitely how I came to my current position to be a Christian atheist. Even before I realized that there was even a term for that that there was such a thing as Christian atheism. And so, and there are also obvious, and go back to the Wikipedia article, mentions different parts of the world, by denomination, or by region, really, has places like says about 42% of churchgoers in the Netherlands, particularly the prostitutes in the Netherlands, the PKN, are in fact non-theists. And it also mentions that about 1 out of 6 clergy in the Netherlands out of about 860 pastors altogether. 860 pastors, 1 in 6 of them are either agnostic or atheist. And, I'll let you do the math on that one. But, that's a pretty substantial number, 1 out of 6. Let's see. A minister of the PKN, Klaas Andrikse, if hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, has described God as a word for experience or human experience. Actually, I remember watching that in a documentary on I think it was the Netherlands. So I was talking about religion, where this American Baptist preacher, goes over to the Netherlands to investigate religion over there, and it's part of this series. I think it's like the country trying to market itself almost. But aside from that, I digress. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, of course, we mentioned the BBC article, so it's obviously kind of a thing going on in the UK too, a little bit. There are even Quaker atheists, or non-theist friends, as they like to call themselves. Of course, if you want to know what Quakers are, just look, Google it or something. Come on, don't make me do all the work. And interestingly enough, too, like I said, these accounts in the Netherlands and UK, they're pretty much more so kind of like accepted things, where people get along for the most part. But in Canada, there's actually a bit of a controversy right now within the United Church of Canada. One of their ministers, Greta Vosper, who was actually an outspoken atheist, non-supernaturalist, actually, preaches, very humanist messages from the pulpit of her church as part of the of the United Church of Canada. And now they're reconsidering her ordainment. They're asking her to come in and reaffirm the ordination creed. Where they have her affirm the various beliefs. And so if they're not satisfied with her answers to the questions, how she answers them, then they're pretty much going to kick her and her church to the curb. Basically, they're going to excommunicate her, essentially. So, that'd be interesting to see how that goes. And I suppose I'll just wrap it up with my take here. And my position is that, for me, theism is actually an ideology. And instead, factual reality is my Lord. And, things like, and so that's basically the perspective overall that informs my interpretation of Scripture in particular. Particularly being able to look at things from an empirical and evidentialist perspective, to evaluate interpretations with sound evidence, is always is a big part of my beliefs and convictions too. But I'll get to talk about these other things in future shows. So, now, this has been the Christian Atheist Podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and farewell for now.